This is Friday, April 27th, 2018, and we are coming to you live from the Studio OU sound booth. Yeah, sorry. I'm being motioned by my co-host that I have the wrong mic turned up for him. There we are.
There we go.
We are coming to you from the Studio OU sound booth in the Oklahoma Memorial Union at the University of Oklahoma in Norman, Oklahoma. I can't say Oklahoma enough. Oklahoma.
Hey.
We are Pop Culture Water Cooler. We are a weekly... try to be weekly show that covers everything film, television, movies, comic books, whatever we're into at that moment. My name is Kendall Watson, and I'm joined by this week
Eric Napper,
as always, and we are very, very happy to be here and kind of sad. It's actually our last show for the semester, and or we're figuring out the future right now. We won't make any statements or anything, but we're kind of figuring out. Reason being, we might be in different cities, so I guess we'll see at some point.
Yeah, it's easy to do long distance podcasts.
It is easy to do. You're exactly right.
Technology makes that feasible. So.
And that's kind of the bittersweet life of a college student. You really only have a certain amount of time together before you kind of have to...
I don't want to get hung up here, man.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sorry.
I completely get it.
Yeah.
But we want to thank you guys so much for if you join us weekly or whenever we're on. Apologize, this semester has kind of been a little bit more sporadic with work. We just want to thank you guys so much for taking some time out of your day and joining us and participating with us on our social media. As always, you guys can find us Pop Culture Water Cooler on Facebook and Twitter at PopCultureWC. There you can ask us questions, you can interact with us. We monitor daily and we can see your guys' activity, so definitely give us a check on there. And these shows, as always, will be uploaded to our YouTube and SoundCloud accounts at just search Pop Culture Water Cooler on both of those, and you can find both of our shows as well. So we are coming actually off of a 2-week break, and in that 2 weeks, Eric, how's life?
Oh, it's good, man. It's kind of stressful, just getting ready to, figure things out and move and stuff.
Sure.
I'm sure it's the same for you as well.
Oh, yeah,
getting
definitely.
ready for that wedding.
Yeah, with school. Yeah, wedding in 2 weeks.
Jeez.
For those who don't know, if you do listen, I am getting married. I'm getting married on May 13th.
You old.
I am old. I think I'm officially an adult. So.
Yeah, that's adult life right there.
Oh, yeah. So that's coming up here soon. It's the Sunday of finals week, so we're great at planning there. But, it's better to, I will say, though, it made this semester go by really, really fast. So, I can't wait. I love my fiance, and we will be in Disney World in 2 weeks, and I'm watching the calendar. So
that's cool, man.
So thank you guys again so much. We're going to do things a little differently this week. It'll be kind of interesting. Normally, if you guys follow our show, we do weekly news where we talk about news as far as films go, like, for instance, Avengers Infinity War just came out, or we'll talk something about television or celebrities or stuff that's going on in pop culture. But with this being this last show for this semester, we kind of wanted to take a step back, and we actually just recently kind of got inspiration from one of our series that we follow outside of this series to kind of give us inspiration, and they recently delved into the personal preferences of the hosts in that case, what films they love, what films kind of made them who they are, and I'll kind of get into that here in a second. But first, we really, like I said, we are taking a step back. No news this week. You guys probably, all you see in the news bracket is Avengers Infinity War, so are you going to see that, by the way?
Yeah, I'm actually reading the comic right now, Infinity Gauntlet, and it is so good.
Yeah.
I started reading the Marvel comics.
That's like the one from the 80s, right?
Yeah. It's so good, man.
Did you ever read Marvel The End?
No.
You should read it after that. It's kind of the same story. It's like Thanos comes... to pretty much kill everybody.
Okay.
And it's inspiration to this one as well, because he's in love with Lady Death, who is a character.
Yeah, that's what Gauntlet's about.
Yeah. So I never read the actual Gauntlet one, so it sounds like it's just probably a rehashing
exactly the
of it.
same thing.
And so he starts trying to kill everybody for Lady Death.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go.
He kills half of the universe in a snap of his fingers.
Yeah.
And the Avengers are like, what?
Yeah. But we can't talk anymore about it, though, because I haven't seen the movie. I have a feeling I have to admit, I said there was no news. We'll just talk about this briefly.
All right.
I am terrible at this. Anybody that knows me very well knows that I love knowing spoilers.
Okay.
I am a huge film fan, but I love knowing the end of it, partly because I want to know if it's a waste of my time or not.
Okay.
But two, just because with this, I've been a comic book fan my whole life. I already know what, for instance, this storyline is getting at. So I read the spoilers to see if it matched up, and I won't say any more, but I was pleasant.
Just let me know if it's close to the comics or not. Yes or no?
No. No.
That's what I'm doing, because the writing in the comics is so much better.
Right.
What I found.
Always. Yeah.
Because I just read
sure.
Civil War 2.
Civil War is amazing.
And
Civil War is a fantastic storyline.
Yeah.
In comics.
Yeah. It's and it's so much better than the movie.
And you know what, though? I will say they really tried to make it feasible in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
Like, they really tried to work with what they had.
They could have made 3 movies out of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I was upset because you didn't see, for instance, in the comic, man, this is like a fun tangent. I like this before we get into it. In the comics in Civil War, there's an amazing scene where they have to capture Daredevil. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. It's like his one scene in it or something like that.
Yeah.
But they're like hauling him off to jail. And is he speaking to Captain America, or who's he speaking to?
Yeah, he speaks to Iron Man.
No, it's Iron Man. Yeah, you're right. And he goes like, "Here's your 2 coins, Judas."
Yeah, here's your, is it your 36 coin or whatever?
Yeah, pretty much, obviously biblical reference there, but like it's just so cool to see kind of like those characters interact and like the cornerstone of their personalities really manifest. Where in the movies, obviously we didn't get Daredevil, but obviously too, you don't get those moments,
Yeah, you really don't. That's a little too dark, a little too much, I think.
Sure. Well, and so absolutely political.
Yeah.
And like the comic is so political compared to the film, where it was just like,
It has, I feel like it's definitely allegorical, is that the word?
Sure.
To authority, police force, and gun rights.
Right.
That's definitely like direct.
For sure. And you know what? I will say I thought it was one of the better Marvel movies as a movie. Obviously, it didn't stick to what Civil War was, but I thought it was...
as a movie?
Yeah, as one of the movies. I'm sorry. I enjoyed it in the way of... Well, my cop-out is that I enjoy when I see all the Avengers together.
Okay.
So I enjoyed that. I thought they always do that well.
Easy sell.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But in this case, what I've read I really like, though, but it doesn't follow the comic book storyline.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I like Infinity Gauntlet so much I might be disappointed.
Yeah.
But,
Well, and I looked at it and I saw, when they announced Infinity War, years back when they first showed Thanos, I was like, oh man, my mind immediately jumped to what happens in the comic, and I was like, oh, this is going to be crazy. And then to read that it's not going to happen, I mean, they're obviously going a different direction.
Because they were going to make it a 2-parter, right? And they just decided to make it one.
Well, it is kind of a 2-parter. So
I knew it.
God, I can't really see. I can't.
I could see. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. Dang it.
Sure. Well, although, I did read a review that wasn't full of spoilers, but even the review said, it sets it up very well for a second part. So I guess they're not really trying to conceal that it's a second part.
I mean, I already said it. I feel like at the end of this movie, he's going to get all the gems and kill half the universe, and then it's going to continue on from there, and then be Infinity Gauntlet from then on.
Well, I mean, and I can't say anything. I know for sure.
I'm right.
I know for sure that if they are listening, I know there are some people that haven't seen this film in particular, so I don't want to ruin it for them before they've seen it. So.
Okay. But I feel like that's what's going to happen at the end. There's nothing wrong with speculation.
That is your speculation.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and since I know, I can't really be like, I speculate.
Yeah.
So.
It may not be fair because I'm reading the comic right now, but I still haven't finished the comic, so who knows?
Right. Well, and part of it too is so have you seen where they're setting up for Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and Captain Marvel to be the 3 main in the next series? Because Chris Evans as Captain America, his contract is up after these 2 Avengers, and he said I'm done. So and they've kind of alluded to okay, most likely the Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America are going to be done. That's kind of the illusion, and it would make sense. I mean, Iron Man 1 was 10 years ago. It's and so but they have confirmed. I think Kevin Feige actually did say that he is setting up those 3 to be kind of the new Marvel Trinity after the main
Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, and who else?
Captain Marvel. She hasn't had her movie yet. She's going to have a movie out next year. It's played by Brie Larson. She was the main character of Room and also the X in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, she's really, really good. She's Oscar, winning.
I mean, man, I just want them to do Spider-Man right for once, please. Just do Spider-Man correctly.
I will say this is probably the version I've enjoyed the most. I don't know. I like Tobey Maguire's.
Sam Raimi's just such a much better director, and I just don't. I don't like that what they did with Iron Spider. It's just completely different from
in this one.
Well, I mean, in both of them. I mean, technically, the first one was kind of Iron Spider. Oh
yeah.
But he's a scientist. Peter's a scientist. He makes his own stuff, and he used his father's web shooting schematics to make his own, and he perfected it. And that was not what happened at all.
Right.
Oh, maybe it was. I don't know. I don't know how he got his web shooters initially, but the whole Tony Stark, all the Stark gadgets just bugged me, man.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and you know what?
No pun intended.
I will say on that note, I think Robert Downey Jr. is great.
Yeah.
I think his Iron Man is great,
Mhm.
but I look at pictures of Infinity War and I see Robert Downey Jr.'s, early 50s face,
Yeah.
late 40s,
Yeah.
and it's like, man, it's time to move on. Like,
Yeah.
because he's been no fault to him. He's been in it for 10 years, but I just I look at it and I just see. You mentioned a while back it made you sad that Harrison Ford was old, and it made you sad to see him run.
Yeah.
And kind of
Yeah.
like it's kind of that same idea here. It's like I'm sad to see Robert Downey Jr. like. First off, all CGI, but obviously it's not his fault. That's his character. But at the same time, it's like he just looks old. Like I just don't.
Yeah, he looks wrinkly.
I think
Kind of
that
saggy.
I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
He could be a cool like consulting character, but I'm kind of as a main character, I'm kind of over him.
It's crazy because like it's funny. These characters are so immortal and like timeless that they're outliving these just actors. And
Yeah.
getting old.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's
yeah.
dark.
Which the two Chris's, Evans and Hemsworth, they obviously aren't as old as Downey
Yeah.
Jr. is, but it's just like.
So Thor's done too. What's going on?
Well, we'll see. I know for sure Chris Evans.
All right.
Okay.
I sense something.
No,
here.
no. So Chris Evans, his contract is up. That's the one that's like for sure.
Mhm.
Now, if you remember, they had to like fight to get Downey Jr. signed for these two Avengers.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
That's kind of sad, man.
They had to like fight him because like they actually. So I think they signed him all at the same time for Civil War and for these two Avengers. But they he initially didn't agree to it, and they were like, "What's the future of Iron Man?" So that implies that the three original are kind of moving on.
They're all
Which I don't blame
They're
them.
all gonna die in Infinity War.
I don't blame them though. It's like they're bringing home checks, but at the same time, I think playing the same character for 10 years would probably get old. You know?
Man. You get typecast, man.
Yeah.
Like seriously, what else has Robert Downey Jr. done?
Since coming back.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there are movies that I enjoy him in, but you're right. It's none will ever be as big, as this is. This is something else.
And I hate Chris Evans, man.
You hate him
I mean, as
Captain America?
as an actor.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's tough. I just don't know
Maybe
who else
that
they
might
would
have-
have got, to play Captain America.
They could have had Chris Hemsworth play.
This
Captain
is like
America.
a conversation that should have happened in like 2000, 10? When did
did
First Avenger come out?
I just started reading the comics. And I'm
Oh, okay.
like-
So now you actually know
and
Captain
now
America.
I'm like,
yeah.
well, I
That's
mean,
true.
I knew him before, but now I'm like reading them myself instead of just hearing secondhand from my brother and stuff.
Right, yeah.
So-
You're right. Well, and if you really want to get on that note, going back to Iron Man before, so my stepfather, who I started like reading comic books with when he like raised me with comic books, he's a huge like lifelong Iron Man fan.
Yeah.
And he loves Downey Jr. as Iron Man, but he even says too, he's like, Iron Man was not funny before Robert Downey Jr.
He
Like
was
he
not
was
funny.
kind of a word you can't say on
Yeah.
radio. Like he was kind of a not a fun guy.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, he's kind of just this uptight, like almost authoritarian.
Yeah.
Especially in Civil War, he's like
Cutthroat businessman.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Downey Jr. came along and they kind of remodeled him into this, character.
They made him a Spider-Man Iron Man. Spider-Man's that character.
Yeah.
Peter Parker's the quippy one all the time.
Right.
Not
Iron Man.
Yeah.
And they have this weird father-son dynamic between him
I
and
hate
Spider-Man.
that so much, and I hate the like hot Aunt May thing. Like
Yeah, it's true. I
that's
mean,
so stupid.
you can tell they're going for contemporary ideas, but it's like, it's just you can tell it's because they're trying to engage a not comic book audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which no fault to them. It's money at the end of the day. They try to make it as big as they can so they can get
But come on, man, that's like the source material. Just stick to it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
But anyway.
Well, speaking of how passionate we are about this, that kind of relays into our topic this week. We really kind of wanted to take a step back for this last show and kind of talk about ourselves for once, as kind of narcissistic as that sounds, because we talk about things on a weekly basis that are new, that are current, that we are watching, and try to interpret them as best we can. But we never actually talk really about ourselves and give you guys an idea of who we are. As film fans, where we started from, what was the first film that really got us into film, where our boundaries lie that you guys can better understand when we talk about these things, to kind of understand our points of view and where we're coming from. So we really, really, really wanted to take this opportunity to kind of get more personal with you guys and let you know a little more about our story.
Yeah, that's nice.
So before we begin, found a quote. So I'm gonna actually on my side. So we picked, just as a reminder, we picked 5 films each that are personal to us in different ways, and we're gonna explain why they are and how they helped kind of develop who we are nowadays. The first, I'm gonna have some quotes kind of sprinkled in there to kind of bring up some topics that we can talk about. And you know what? I figured, by the way, too, I figured we could go 5 each instead of 1, 1, 1, 1. If
Okay,
that makes sense.
that's fine.
That way we can kind of stop and
Focus
talk
on ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And that way it's not spread out, and we can kind of get what we have, said. So before we begin, I have a quote from the Oscar-winning actor Forrest Whitaker on film in general. So Forrest Whitaker says, "I think that cinema and the arts are central in our lives because we grow up and learn about the world through our exposure to stories. Parents use them as a tool to teach their children fundamental truths and values, much as adults can view them to gain exposure to cultures and individuals that they'd never be able to view in their own lives." So I picked that quote because I thought that made some fantastic points, often that kind of go unsaid about film, because obviously film is entertaining on its surface level. You go to see a film to escape the reality that you're in, but I think there's much more to it than that.
Yeah.
I think something that really, really manifests in people, whether they realize it or not, is they're seeing other cultures. They're seeing other ways of life, and that's what really I think deep down interests people about film.
Yeah, I mean, especially growing up in the 90s as kids when the internet was not as efficient, and like you really just like it wasn't worth getting on the computer. You like formed your ideas of like relationships and situations through movies. And,
Yeah.
like at least whether it was good or not, that's what happened,
Sure, yeah. Well, and it's funny because, what's the old wives saying where it's like, television can't teach you anything, or,
That's so false.
It is completely false.
Yeah.
I attribute so many of the things that I know as a person to things that I've seen in a film.
Yeah.
And if you want to get real romantic with it, I feel like through the films that I watch over and over again throughout my, my life, I feel like I've lived the life of this detective. I feel like I've lived the life of this, these characters, these stories that you love so much, whether they're romanticized or really close to the truth.
Yeah.
You are in their shoes for that hour and a half, that 2 hours.
Yeah.
And it's big on you understanding the culture and the identity of that person.
Yeah.
And the writer.
One of my favorite quotes is like, "One who does not read only lives once."
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Do you know who said that?
I forgot who said that, sadly.
No, it's anonymous. Just say it's anonymous.
Yeah, anonymous. It might have been Tolkien, but I really don't know.
Hey, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But it's completely true, though. It really is. I think it's a valuable. I love that he mentioned with parents teaching it to their kids, because my dad, that's something very personal to me. My dad was a huge film fan, or he's alive. My dad is a huge film fan. And he's kind of the person that I grew up watching films with, and kind of sparked my interest to kind of get me where I am, right now talking about film.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very valuable teaching tool. This allegorical, to go back to your word, way to teach your kids life lessons and certain things. It's so good that some things you just can only communicate visually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
just through show, not tell.
Yeah. Oh, completely. Yeah. So do you want to start us off, or do you want me to start us off?
Either way, man.
Okay. Yeah. I'll go ahead and start us off.
Okay.
Yeah, that works. So I, just as a reminder, I have some quotes in here, and I'll preface and say who they're from before I actually get to it. But I actually kind of divided up my 5 list into periods of my life, being that of early childhood development, young adult, teenage, where I got my sense of humor from, those types of things. So I tried to really pick apart parts of my life that I can kind of snapshot with a certain film, whether I remember, whether I can't remember how many times I've seen it or whether I've seen it once, something that I feel like kind of is the good idea of that point, at that age that I was at that time. So I'll begin with a quote from the actor David Tennant, who plays famously Doctor Who and many other roles. He says, I was hugely formed by stories I was told as a child, whether that was in a book, the cinema, theater, or television, and probably television more than any medium is what influenced me as a child, and formed my response to literature, storytelling, and therefore the world around me. So again, this idea that these stories, television, film, books, they really do, whether you realize it, the more you read, the more you watch, they start to shape your personality, and shape your worldview. And I think I've written little excerpts that I'm going to kind of introduce my movies before I actually say them. So this is my for my number 1 for early childhood development. This is me. This is not a quote. As a child, I often remember my mother saying I asked too many questions during films. I always wanted to know more and as much as possible, and to understand what I was seeing. I was always aware that there was much more out there and than I already understood, and wanted to reach out and grasp for as much as I could. Film quickly became a way for my understanding to grow, largely acting as a visual storybook portraying fictitious tales centering around real-world ideas and problems. Early visualizations of the world came from many familiar places like the films of Disney's Aladdin and Hercules, showing different cultures and semi-historical framings, but I never saw a true clashing in world cultures more than that of Disney's Tarzan. So I was 8 years old when that film came out, and I actively remember previews for that film, for Disney's Tarzan, before it came out, and then I remember seeing it, and then I remember owning it. And it is one of the films that I cannot tell you how many times I've seen that film, but I think that is one of the first films that really brought up the idea of cultures beyond, I guess beyond race is the best way to say it, but more situations in society, whether it's I equate it to kind of modern society versus like primitive society in the case of Tarzan, but really it's, I think, like social structure between like the middle class and higher class and like lower class, and how I think I realized as a kid that whether I could put it into words or not, that you stereotypically look down on people that you are raised better than, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to obviously counter that. But I think that is a film that really first opened up my eyes to there are differences in the world beyond just the way people look. And it just because someone looks like you doesn't mean that they have the same life as you, whether that's for better or worse.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's like fire. That's fire.
and Phil Collins, that's a whole other thing. Phil Collins on the soundtrack is just amazing. But I really think that film, I really just defined my childhood. I think there are just so many things. Like I mentioned, I love Aladdin and Hercules, many Disney films, and I felt like, I want to get your opinion on this, but I felt like it was kind of a cop-out in a way to use Disney because that's just such a... Like,
it isn't, man.
It isn't?
No.
Okay.
My first one's Disney, too.
Oh, okay. And but I think that's like really the magic of what they do, though, is because they know that their audience are these children, and they're able to communicate these ideas to where you can understand it whether you realize it or not, but you see the way that these people are acting and interacting, and you realize that, for instance, like in Tarzan, like love, like the idea of love and connection can
transcend.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Hercules and Aladdin have similar ideas as well, but I think this movie really first kind of laid the groundwork for kind of who I like to think I had become today. Let me see if I have any more talking points on it. I commented on the modern versus primitive societies. Also as well. So Tarzan is a great movie for kids, but it's super serious. Like, so it deals with ideas of acceptance, forgiveness, and the importance of family. So not only differing cultural status, but also to the acceptance among your own culture, and what you have to do to feel like you're accepted by the people around you, whether they are different from you or not.
I mean, and if you look at like the portrayal of the villain.
Yeah.
Like
Clayton.
How he has just a complete disregard for like sentimental attachment to these gorillas and stuff.
Right.
And it's just like a complete disregard for like life, basically.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And even Tarzan with the gorillas as well. I mean, it's this simple idea of these animals and this man being raised by these animals, and kids can understand that, but at the same time, it really dealt with the idea of the coming of age and becoming your own and becoming a leader. And it showed you that despite differences, you can still make a difference in your own society, So I think that's really important. And then also the importance of family, too, whether that's family that raised you or that's family that you get as you grow older. It also, I think, taught me to be true to the people that I care about.
Yeah, man. That's a great dissection of Tarzan. Like, wow.
Thanks. So yeah, that was my first early childhood development was for Tarzan. And for my number 2, I actually don't have a quote to intro this with, but I do have an excerpt. I wrote an excerpt for each of these so I can make sure to communicate to you guys my thought process in going into this list. So for number 2, this is my young childhood, not quite 10-year-old self. I called it the young boy, the love of action. I grew up being the typical young boy during the mid-1990s. Power Rangers and Pokemon were my obsession, and the stimulus of the action genre was everywhere. Things like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had me running around with a fake katana and recreating various fights in the television series, often to my older sister's annoyance, and helped me confine the energy that I had into the shows that I loved. That was when I discovered the action film genre. Think what you will of my parents letting this kid watch rated R movies younger than 17, but I was one of them. I can't exactly count how many times I've seen the movie True Lies in my lifetime, but I can say that I lived and breathed that film upon every visit to my grandparents' house. So my number 2 for my young boy action going crazy, guns blazing genre is True Lies, James Cameron True Lies.
That's awesome. Explains a lot.
Does it? From 1994. We actually talked about this before the show. I didn't realize you liked this movie. I
love
absolutely
this movie.
adore
It's
this
awesome,
movie.
man.
It's
So
so
classic.
over the top,
Yeah,
but it's
it
so
is.
good. I literally today I just watched a video talking about how this movie, their idea of this movie has like a 4th act to it, which I thought was really interesting because so for those who have seen the movie, there's a part of the movie kind of comes to a climax when a nuclear bomb detonates off the coast of an island in the Florida Keys, and they kind of considered that like the end of the 3rd act in that movie. And then once you hear that Harry's daughter is kidnapped and on the top of a building is like the 4th act where it's like kicks it into high gear,
Yeah.
you know, and he's like, oh, there's this jet here, let me take this jet.
Yeah.
You know, like this movie is so ridiculous, but not quite the Last Action Hero ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I loved this movie.
Yeah.
I really did. I think this just like
It even starts at the name, True Lies. Like
True Lies. Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just ridiculous. Did you know this was a James Cameron movie, by the way?
No, I had no idea.
Yeah, James Cameron.
That's
It's
what-
fun fact.
To be fair, it's been probably 10 years since I've seen it.
Oh,
but-
okay, yeah. No, it's it's so good. The opening, like I literally can envision every single like part of this film. I've seen it so many times.
So the plot is like he, his wife doesn't know that he's an agent, right? He's like a
Right.
secret agent.
Harry
Okay.
Stamper. Yeah.
Yeah, and like doesn't she think he's cheating on him
So she thinks. I don't. You know.
or
I don't,
something of that variety?
She is having an affair outside of him.
Oh, are you serious?
Yes,
Oh.
but I don't know. I can't remember if she actually thinks he's cheating or not. I think she thinks he's just a busy husband, not paying attention to her, and so she has an affair. They don't actually. I don't think they actually have sex, but with Bill Pullman. Do you remember that? He's a car salesman.
Yes.
And so that's kind of like a sidebar of the movie, you
Yeah.
know, where he like goes and pretty much scares Bill Pullman into not having an affair. But yeah, so the overall story is like, but then he kind of has an affair in a way because
Really?
you remember the I'm so sorry I don't know her name, but the lead actress from Wayne's World.
Yes.
So she's in this movie and she's an arms dealer that Harry's like investigating. I don't remember. I think initially he doesn't realize that she's the arms dealer.
Mm-hmm.
She's an art dealer. And so he's kind of like investigating this terrorist group and then trying to stop this arm trade while dealing with his wife who's having an affair, and then while dealing with his teenage daughter who rebels, and he has to go save her on the top of a building in Miami.
Yeah.
So
It's ridiculous. And then everything comes undone and they all the lies come out.
Oh, for sure. But you know what, though? I think one of the reasons why I loved it so much as a kid is because it was an action genre, and the bad guys were the bad guys, and the good guys were the good guys. It was easy to define. Like, It was easy to define, and the good guy always won.
Yeah, it's just a good old feel-good action.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For developing boy.
Oh, yeah. And who can forget the scene where she drops the Uzi down the stairs, and it's like shooting people as it drops?
Oh my gosh.
It's so ridiculous, but at the same time it takes itself out of the seriousness and just becomes this exhilarating thrill ride to watch. And I think my young self absolutely loved it. I put similar to True Lies, other films that I loved that I watched as a kid were Die Hard with a Vengeance and Face Off. We're kind of the same
John
idea.
Woo.
Yeah, John Woo. Yeah. Which I didn't know that was John Woo until like
It's
nowadays.
kinda not John Woo.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. I forgot you're a big John Woo,
Yeah.
hard-boiled man.
Yeah.
But I will say though, I loved Die Hard with a Vengeance too. That's one of my favorite movies as well.
That's one of those. I've only seen the original Die Hard and
Yeah.
Live Free or Die Hard. Those
Well,
are the only two.
and the original Die Hard is a near amazing, perfect movie as well.
Yeah.
I just Diary of the Vengeance is one that I watched all the time.
Which one is that? Is that the second?
That's the one
or
with
third?
Samuel L. Jackson's the third one.
Okay.
So that's the one where there's a guy, Jeremy Irons, the guy who plays Scar and other people, and Alfred in the new Batman movies. He has bombs throughout New York City, and so he's like detonating them unless because. So John McClane killed his brother in the first movie, and so he's getting back at him by like making John McClane like do games throughout New York, or else he like sets bombs off.
It's like Saw on a massive scale.
Exactly. Yeah. No, but really though, it really is. So so those movies are similar, but again, the idea of like a clear cut, rugged good guy, and then a clear cut bad guy.
A dude.
Yeah, and the guy, the bad guy gets what's coming to him.
Always.
Always.
Man.
So I think that really just helped solidify that young age of just blowing things up and being awesome.
Yeah, man. You got to have that as a grown boy.
So for this next one, I do have a quote to kind of lead into my next idea. And this is going to be obviously a little more serious pick, because this is actually going to be me as a teenager and kind of my discovery of, I use the word discovery of film, but beyond just simple watching film, but actually took a step in the direction of wanting to study film and watch film more closely. So this is a quote from Martin Scorsese. It says, no more than ever have we needed to talk to each other, to listen to each other and understand how we see the world, and cinema is the best medium for doing this. So this is leading into my personal story of teenager and the discovery of film. I'll never forget the first time I talked with somebody about The Godfather. I was 15 at the time, and I had a history teacher in high school that I absolutely admired. He was a great educator who was passionate about his teaching and his students, and most of all, he was a film head. Before conversations with him, I had never attempted to understand why I loved the films that I did. I'd always been, I like that movie, or I think that movie sucks scenario. It was in our conversation that he unveiled the beauty of the camera's framings, the star power of the cast brought to the production, and the command that Coppola had with his storytelling. My 15-year-old mind immediately went home to rewatch it again and again, ultimately beginning the process of which got me to this very moment here now. So, my first film for my discovery of film and research of film is probably a film that many people have had this reaction to, but it's The Godfather. I've met a lot of people that don't like that movie and think it's too long.
Yeah.
But I think this movie was the first movie that I sat down and I really saw there was something special going on in front of me, and that I didn't know what it was, but I knew I wanted to know.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all have that movie. Like, that's definitely the same effect of one of my, it's like the discovery moment. I definitely have a discovery film.
Yeah. Well, and I was so thankful because at the time, again, it's like I had grown up watching films with my dad. The first rated R movie I ever saw was The Jackal with Richard Gere and Bruce Willis. It was really weird, not that great movie, but like I from a young age, like I have these distinct memories of watching these films growing up and never really knowing why they were classics, just kind of knowing they were like these like Universal like monster movies from the 30s, and then like watching like the movie MASH, and all these things. And he would tell me, "Oh, this is a classic movie, Forbidden Planet. This is a classic movie," But I never knew what that meant until talking to this teacher, and he really kind of laid it out and said, this is a culture if you kind of want to take a part in it, and so for many, many years, The Godfather was my favorite movie. I would always stand by that. I think, obviously, I'm not the only one that thinks it is a near perfect movie, but I think it really is a special movie. It really does take the power of visual storytelling, and it utilizes sound and silence, and then it uses the visual storytelling in the way of it'll be quiet and there'll be moments of silence, and it'll be kinetic and it'll go really quickly, and the acts of violence will be very quickly, and just the pace of that movie, even though it is long on paper, if you watch it, it really is so engaging and so organic and just so natural that it really is just a fantastic movie.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that I saw very young, and I like it's just been a long time. I need to give it another watch.
Well, and again, it's not for everybody. Not everybody loves the mafioso, genre, which is fine.
I just haven't really seen it since I developed an ability to like read film.
Sure.
I need to go back and it's drastically needed.
Yeah. Well, in that too, and its sequel too. Its sequel is actually considered better than its first.
Yeah.
That's happened never.
Yeah.
That never. So it really does show you that Francis Ford Coppola was onto something special. But just the cast, the power of the cast, and everybody that was in it.
Yeah.
And
knockout cast. Man.
Robert De Niro making his film debut in the second one.
Marlon
Brando, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. Just all these things, and James Caan and Robert Duvall, and it really is just, it's fantastic. It's so, nothing had ever been done like it before.
Yeah.
But yet it has changed so much ever since. As far as mafia films, and as far as the storytelling of multiple characters, and a crime organization, and just all these things. Like, you wouldn't have things like The Wire and Breaking Bad, I feel like, without Godfather in the original.
It's crazy because you have like The Godfather, and then you have like Scorsese. Like, just mafia films have so much diversity, and there's so much good in it.
Right.
It's crazy how much good is in the mafia genre.
Right. And I'm actually in an Italian cinema class this semester, and I recently watched the film Gomorrah. Have you seen that movie?
I have not.
That's a Criterion. I've always just seen it on the list, but
worth watching.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. I actually liked it a lot. It's modern, so it's based off the Camorra family, a crime family in Italy nowadays. Really interesting, though, the author of that novel, because it's off of a novel, he actually lives, I think, in London now, because he had to move out of Italy because they pretty much said they would never stop trying to kill him until he was dead. So he has like a 24/7 personal guard now. Yeah, from the Camorra crime family. Like, it said like they are the most murderous crime organization in the world.
Whoa.
And they operate like in the slums of, like, I think it was, I can't remember what town it was, in Italy. But again, you wouldn't have films like this if you didn't originally have films like The Godfather.
The Godfather.
So other films that I put in a genre like this, that I put for the discovery of film at the same time, films that I go back and that I rewatch and I discover something new every time I watch them, are that'll always be my favorites, is The Godfather, Jaws, and Goodfellas.
Gotta have some Spielberg in there.
Oh, man.
Early 90s Spielberg.
I can't tell you. So my fiance is deadly afraid of sharks, but one of my favorite movies is Jaws. So you get this weird dynamic some movie nights where she won't watch Deep Blue Sea. She won't watch...
Dude, Jaws is awesome. I could not get in a pool after...
it's so good.
It's like, sorry. Well, I'll talk about this later, but
No, you're fine.
I just wanted, okay, here, I'll talk about it now. The video that we're referencing for this whole, episode is, he talks about like how much scarier things are when you're a kid watching movies. Yeah. And that's what I had with Jaws. Like, I was affected for months after I saw that, It's just crazy how that happens.
Oh, you're completely right. It's weird because I think I've pushed past that now to where I just watch it because I love it. But you're completely right there. Yeah. Like, and he mentioned in that movie too, The Brave Little Toaster, and like that moment scarred me for.
Same, man.
Referring to the air conditioner. Yeah, suicide.
Oh my gosh. That's way darker now that I think back on it.
Oh, it totally is. But movies like Jaws, though, and like Goodfellas, and like The Godfather, man, like they are just so worth just like revisiting on a yearly, if not 6 months basis.
Yeah,
and they're so good. I think I've seen I think I've seen Goodfellas probably 4 times in the past 2 months, just because I'm sitting around and I'm like, man, I just want to see the scene where the piano exit to Layla plays as they go up on the pink car when they find the bodies in it. It's like, there are just scenes that you're just like, this is brilliant. Like, there are moments of brilliance in these films, and they really are just so special and so inviting to those who crave to know about film.
Yeah, totally. I just want to sit down and eat some fettuccine.
So fettuccine, Italian.
Watch some Goodfellas. The Godfather.
The Godfather. All right. So for time's sake, I'll move on. But no quote for this next one. But I do have my little excerpt. This is my young adult, and so this is not necessarily a time of my life, but more an identity, where I got my sense of humor from. What I find is funny when it comes to comedies or movies that incorporate comedic moments in them. So here we go. I'm admittedly a person who laughs at my own jokes. Growing up, there are things that I found funny that in reality were very strange, usually spoken in dialogue, and sometimes deemed too stupid by the friends I was with. I've never seen that in a negative. Never seen that as a negative trait, nor will I ever begin to. But I do, however, credit this movie for the creation of the sense of humor I have today. The movie I chose for this is Army of Darkness, directed by Sam Raimi in 1992. Fun fact, this movie scared me so bad, I had to quit watching it as a child. I was a kind-hearted kid back then, but just a few years later, I rewatched the film to immense delight. This film captured the quirky nature of heroic archetypes while telling an entertaining story with a nonstop humorous moments, filling from bookend to bookend. So that's a true story. I actually came in halfway through this movie when there was a skeleton on the screen, and I was just like, no, I noped out. Yeah, I was gone. I was gone. It sounded like Marv from Home Alone. No, I was gone. I was out. So, but I went back and I watched it. And Army of Darkness is like one of my favorite movies of all time. You've seen Army of Darkness, right?
Yeah. This is my boomstick.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And it's so funny too, because it's like Evil Dead 1 is not a comedy at all.
Yeah, it's very serious.
And I'm pretty sure Evil Dead 2 is pretty serious too.
No, it's definitely like
it is
self-reflexive comedy.
Oh, okay.
See, this is
that's right. It started bridging the gap.
Yeah, I feel the same way about Evil Dead 2, because when I started watching Evil Dead 2, I was scared out of my mind. I was like, oh my god, this is the scariest thing. But then it started getting kind of funny as I grew older, and I was like, wow, this is great.
It's so over the top.
It's like scary, dark, and funny at the same time.
And then Army of Darkness doesn't even try to be scary. It's
just ridiculous.
It's just so ridiculous. But Bruce Campbell with Sam Raimi's writing and Ivan Raimi's writing, his brother, and even the show. The show Ash vs. Evil Dead actually isn't that bad.
Really,
it's
that's
actually
what
pretty
I hear.
good.
I hear
it's
that.
actually pretty, and it just got canceled too. So 3 seasons.
Oh.
2 of them are on Netflix. So
well. Yeah, that's a bummer.
Give it a check out.
Is it kind of the same style, like kind of funny, scary?
Completely. Yeah.
Really?
Completely.
Okay, awesome.
It is very much still funny. It's ridiculous, but it actually is pretty good, and it's still Sam and Ivan Raimi. So
is Bruce Campbell getting kind of saggy?
He is, and they actually a lot of people were fighting for Starz, the channel, to bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
They literally just happened this week, and Bruce Campbell, once they announced that they said it was done, he said I'm done. He said I'm retiring as Ash. So I think so it sounds kind of done, but. This movie, though, for those who haven't seen it, it is definitely a weird movie. It's a time travel, demon fighting, chainsaw arm wearing, shotgun wielding grocery store clerk.
Yeah, man.
But it's great.
Seriously.
It's so good. It is so, as he mentioned earlier, it's self-reflexive. It doesn't take itself seriously for a moment. But the reason I have it on here, not only for the humor, but it also was one of the first movies that introduced me to kind of the cult classic ideology.
Yeah.
A film where just because it didn't do well doesn't mean it was a bad film. And a lot of people, if you'd say it nowadays, duh, but at a young age, you see Avengers and you think, oh man, this is the best movie in the world.
Yeah.
But if you start,
I've never thought that, but go on.
For people who don't care that much, as much as we do about film. But I think this kind of opened me up to the idea. I think other movies at the time that I have on here that opened me up to the cult classic idea of the horror kind of comedy, less horror, more comedy cult classics are like Rocky Horror Picture Show and the Monty Python body of work.
Yeah.
Especially Monty Python. That was something that I grew up as well as a kid, watching everything I could get my hands on with Monty Python. That my dad would allow me to.
Yeah.
He would show me it and then he'd turn the volume down at some points, But,
close your eyes.
Yeah, close your eyes, But really, though, I think the humor from those, the dry, just stupid humor the conversations that they have I think are so deeply embedded in who I am that's the reason why I still to this day laugh at my own jokes.
You might as well be British.
Exactly. Yeah. I think though, seriously. So that was my number 4. And wow, we're already at the end of my list. Okay, so I do have a quote for this last one, and then I will finish this out. But I have a quote from the critic, the former Roger Ebert. From a dramatic viewpoint, there are few professions that grant their members entry into other lives. High among them are cops, doctors, clergymen, journalists, and prostitutes. Perhaps that explains why they figure in such television and cinema. Their lives are lived in the midst of human drama. So I put that quote down because I think it really captured one of the ideas that I think is very special about film. And we talked about this earlier, but it's the idea of being in somebody else's life, in somebody else's shoes. And when you do that, and not all the time, but sometimes we'll start to realize that their shoes fit a little similar than yours do. And you'll find a lot of common ground and a lot of elements and characters that you identify with so much that they kind of become a part of you. And these films never really leave you, no matter how many years have passed since you've first seen them. So here we go. Here's my number 5. Where do I begin? This film is one that I think about on a daily basis. I have lost count of the number of times as to why, but I know that I crave the feeling given by the main character Renton's footsteps dashing past the camera as Iggy Pop's Lust for Life begins the film. The film I'm referring to is Trainspotting, Danny Boyle's Trainspotting. Some things just stick with you. Some things in life you just can't help but identify with. I've never been a heroin addict, nor a citizen of Scotland, but I've experienced tightly knit friendships, the joy of living carelessly, and the pain and heartache of loss. Every element of this film speaks to who I am as a person, and the moral struggle to try and do what's right in every scenario, and the frustration with the world and myself as I aspire to continue my growth in the modern world. Director Danny Boyle's portrayal of young adult life in the 1980s Edinburgh is the one I feel at home in. This film has moments of comedy, violence, and sadness, but ultimately manifests into a truly human experience, and one that I hold on to tightly as if it were a close friend that I've known my whole life. So this is no secret. Trainspotting is probably my favorite movie, and you don't hear that a lot from film fans. They really don't have a lot of favorite. And a lot of people just try to say, well, movies are good for different reasons, but this is a movie that I watch when I'm happy, I watch when I'm sad. No matter what mood I'm in, I can always connect with this movie in some way. I think this, a lot of people see this movie as just the negative connotations, aka being about heroin addicts and being about this crime between these people, but there are moments of happiness in this film, and I invite anybody who hasn't seen it, one, to probably watch it again, because you probably didn't understand anything they said. It took me like 3 watches to understand everything they were saying, because they have such a thick Scottish accent in that movie. But 2, there is something so deeply human about that film, for their age group and that time in their life. For instance, his use of music and how it drives the characters, and how the movie just seems to have a pace to it throughout the entire thing, and the connections that they form and the friendships that they have and how those friendships operate. I think that movie just truly resonates with me, and probably will for a long time.
Yeah. It's very meaningful, man.
Yeah. So that was my 5 list of movies.
Yeah.
My personal movies. If you guys are joining us, you missed my 5 movies. Pop Culture Water Cooler. We are a weekly show about films, television, and books, and media. And this week we are talking about our 5 top personal films that helped shape who we are, or who we like to think we are nowadays. So thank you guys so much. Those were mine. And let's go with you, Eric. What do you got for number 1?
All right. So my number 1 is Hercules from 1997.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
No, that was like, out of all the Disney movies, this was the one.
Oh, so good.
Every time I think about this movie, like, I almost start to cry. It's so meaningful to me because just growing up and finding out that I was adopted as a child, and then watching Hercules and, seeing that, like, he's trying to find his parents, trying to find his like place in life, and just like still being a gifted person and trying to find where that comes from and like what purpose that would serve in his life, that like means so much to me. And just like I think I just like out of all the Disney movies that were made in the 90s, I think Hercules was like the character I related to the most, and it was so like just I it's amazing. It's the first Disney movie that I heavily identified with the protagonist of, and then like themes of adoption and fulfilling himself and coming of age of a young man with great potential, but he wants to know where it came from, and so that's why I chose Hercules.
I think that is great, and what's really cool about that is the impact that film had on you. It obviously doesn't. It would had no idea like the clear cut that it would have with me, because I was not adopted.
Yeah.
But I have never thought about it that way. But that is actually like a beautiful way to look at that film.
Yeah. No. Even as a kid, I would just like when I hear that song, what is it called? I Will Go the Distance.
Yeah.
Seriously, I tear up every single freaking time. It's awful.
Oh, and I will say this too. To this day, my fiance and I, we still listen to that soundtrack. It's really
so
good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Not just that song too, like, all the music in that movie, but that movie it's fantastic. I think I mentioned that in my list too. That's those movies. It's tough because I don't want to rule out the amazing presence that Disney does with its female protagonists, but I think we were a little handicapped in that area because being raised as males at that time, we were only aware of other male figures, and idols in our lives. And I think that movie they do such a good job of just exploring the ideas that against odds, how to help define yourself despite those odds.
Yeah.
Like you said, like coming of age. And then also, too, I mean, even down to the point of just the actors, like Danny DeVito and James Woods.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, my gosh. Knockout cast.
And I think Rip Thorne, his dad, and, the guy from Men in Black.
Yeah. I think James Woods is the best Hades ever.
Oh, he's so good.
Yeah.
I'm so glad he reprises his role. Reprises?
In, like, video games and stuff.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh,
He's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent choice.
Yeah. And, yeah, it's just so good. And, just like being able to, like, he realizes that he's privileged through, him being the fact that he's a demigod. And it's like, I was adopted into a privileged family. And so it's just it's almost 1-to-1. Like,
Red hair.
Yeah. I mean, I love Hercules, man. It's such a good movie.
Excellent first choice.
All right. So my number 4 is Jurassic Park.
Ooh.
1993, man. I swear. Every time
that was the year you were
Yeah,
born?
that was the year I was born. So it's like super, super close to my heart.
Yeah, sure.
I would watch this movie over and over and over again. Just like every single moment of this movie is ingrained into my brain. Just like Dino DNA, stuff like that. Like, hold on to your butts. Like, stuff like that is just eternally in my mind. It's like the first movie I watched over and over again. It's the first movie that terrified me. Because, like, some of those T-Rexes are pretty scary.
They are pretty scary. Now, going back, it's funny to see, like, the animation, the original animations of, like, the long necks and whatnot.
Yeah.
But you're right, though. I mean,
yeah. And then I was obsessed with dinosaurs as a kid for a while. And so, like, this struck a chord with me.
Movie, who wasn't, though?
Yeah.
That's the power that movie had.
Yeah.
That was such a huge blockbuster. Yeah.
And just being able to see this, like, fantastical, like, classical style as a kid, this was, like, my first exposure to, like, that classical Hollywood style.
Yeah.
And it was perfect because, that was, like, it's nostalgic to me because of the time it came out, and that classical Hollywood style is nostalgic to, like, my parents.
Sure.
Because that's what they watched when they were kids. So it's like, it made classical Hollywood nostalgic for me.
So was this a lot like Hercules? This was kind of like a younger establishment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this was like just establishing my taste. Hercules was super young. I mean, even though it came out later, I still saw it.
That's
saw
how
them
my list
around
was,
the
yeah.
same age.
Sure, yeah.
And then Jurassic Park was probably a little older because it was a little more mature.
Sure,
my parents let me watch it a little bit later. But yeah, man, just like the scene where the kids get back to the like main hall of the park and they're just eating the Jell-O and stuff. Like, there's something about that image and the sound, and like it just is so nostalgic for me for no reason.
Well, and I think so. What I think of when you're talking about it is it creates these moments.
Yeah.
Like these spectacle moments of just like emotion and that only film visual storytelling could do.
No, seriously. And like another example is like when the T-Rex has the Jeep over on upside down, and they're like crawling around in the mud as the Jeep is getting crushed. Like, I don't think a movie will ever do that to me ever again. Like the way, that is ingrained into my brain.
Oh my gosh. Well, yes.
Does that make sense?
Sure. It's the first time you ever seen a specific thing, and then if you ever see it ever again, it won't have the same impact.
Yeah.
You're completely right.
Yeah. I mean, watching it again brings back like in full, but like trying to recreate that with new movies is impossible.
And that's tough too, because I am not like abstaining of seeing it, but I don't really have the drive to go see the new ones.
Yeah.
Because
it looks horrible, man.
Because it doesn't look like the same.
I just recently
Especially-
saw Jurassic World, and they try to recreate some of that.
Yeah.
Like, they definitely, like, there are scenes where, like, you know, they're in the vehicle, and the T-Rex or Indominus Rex
right.
is, like, destroying the vehicle, and they barely get out. Like, they try to recreate that, but it's just not the
Well,
same.
and then have you seen the trailer for the new one?
Yeah, it looks awful.
Yeah, it looks pretty bad. It looks like a espionage, like Spec Ops. Yeah, you're right. The original one, it's gonna live on for a reason. So,
Yeah.
excellent choice.
Yeah. So, my number 3 isn't a movie at all. My number 3 is a TV show, and it was my first exposure to foreign media, like completely first exposure, and thanks to the guys at Toonami. If it wasn't for Toonami, I don't think a lot of kids would be as into Japanese culture or Japanese anime or anything like they
Sure.
are right now.
Yeah.
But the show I'm talking about is Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z was like, you know, it's like my tween years where I'm getting a little bit angsty, you know?
Yeah, sure.
I just
Yeah.
need to take out some anger.
Vegeta, man.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was a little Vegeta.
Yeah.
But like, it definitely helped me. Like, it showed an example of masculinity and power, and like what you should do with that power. You know, it showed two foils, Vegeta and Goku.
Yeah.
And Goku's like a representation of power, and I think that ties into like the use of force in Japan as well. With I think it's Article 9 where they can't have a standing army, and I think that's why like, you know, a lot of anime has this like power dynamic to it, because like they need an example, especially like young kids. They need an example of like power that is used for in the right way.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially like Goku. You know, Goku. He's only fighting when necessary and when it's for good and protecting his friends and family. But anyway, that's kind of a tangent. But it, you know, I would come home every day and watch this show, and I saw every single episode after school, like season 1 through 9. And it's so impactful. It's more impactful to me than like a lot of movies because of how lengthy it was and how drawn out it was.
Oh, yeah.
And it just started my love for Japanese media and Japanese culture. And I don't think anybody can ever take that away from me. Like, no matter, you know, it's so good. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
It's so deeply ingrained. And I think you made a good point of, I think it's criminally underrated how much Toonami had an impact on like the monster that is anime nowadays.
Yeah, like in a world where, you know, you'd watch TV, it's all American, you know, you didn't really have the internet. This was the only like foreign outlet for kids, and you started to realize, like, as a kid who watched cartoons all the time, you started to realize like Japanese cartoons weren't like American cartoons.
Right.
They were dark, violent, and focused on self-improvement and sacrifice of self for friends and family. There's nothing there, like, seriously, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Like, American
absolutely.
cartoons did not do that.
And you know, so I can relate. I grew up without cable, and that had shaped a lot of who I am nowadays too. But so to watch Dragon Ball Z, I had to go over to my neighbor's house, and that was like not a daily thing. Like, that was like maybe once a week, catch it at 4:30. You know, Dragon Ball Z. But with that, I did watch the Americanized versions of like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon and Digimon and Monster Hunter and all these animes too, which don't quite have the cultural impact that Dragon Ball Z did. But you're right, though. Those are just so amazing at shaping the young masculine ideal of how you should live your life.
I mean, you talk to, you know, males our age, most of them watched Dragon Ball Z back in the day.
Yeah.
After
or watch
coming home from
one
school.
of these.
Yeah,
for sure.
coming home from school, like, it's super impactful, I think, on our generation.
Right.
And, it was the first show I watched religiously. So
There you go.
yeah. My mom would come home, and we had 2 TVs, so my mom would watch her soap operas. Like, she would watch All My Children, as I would be in the other room watching Dragon Ball Z. I'd be like, all right, Mom, I need to watch my soap opera. That's what I'd say. Just like, so ridiculous.
Yeah. That's great. I
Yeah.
love it.
Okay, so my number 2 is this is a movie that really got me into just like good movies. Like, the movie that showed me what a good movie is, what a meaningful movie is. And it's No Country for Old Men from 2007.
Yeah, 2007, the Coen
Yeah,
brothers.
Coen Brothers. It's what got me into film studies. I saw it with my sister. We went. She was just like, "Hey, I saw these great reviews. Like, come see this movie with me." And I went and saw it with her, and I was absolutely blown away. Even though I didn't know what was like, I didn't really understand the complex themes behind it. I just knew that, like, you know, the main character dies at the end. That was different. I'd never seen that before.
Right.
The action sequences were so intense that, like, I was literally just on the edge of my seat the whole time, so blown away. And it was different. Like, I'd never seen anything. It was the first quality movie I'd seen.
Speaking of, not understanding things, not only does the character die at the end, but you don't see the character die at the end. And the bad guy gets away, and, you know, like...
It just peters out, and you're like, what? And I loved it. I don't know why, but I loved it. And eventually I kept watching it, and I bought it on Blu-ray, and I was just like, I eventually got it.
More.
Yeah, I eventually got it. I eventually understood, like, why it was so good. And it was like that first movie that gave me that, like, nihilistic affinity towards me. Like, I mean, affinity towards a nihilistic theme in movies. Like, because it was realistic.
Right.
You know? Like, not the hero doesn't always make it out. You know, even though he has the most agency in the movie, he's not always going to make it.
Oh, for sure.
And it kind of it got me into reading books because of Cormac McCarthy. He wrote that book, which they adapted into a movie. And so I started reading books off of that. And yeah, it just spurred a love for a dark film for me.
Oh yeah, I think it's a great choice. I to this day, my fiance watched it with me, but she didn't enjoy it, and it's not because. So she tried to explain this to me, and I'm sure I will butcher it, but she didn't like it not because it didn't have an ending, but because it didn't not because it didn't have a happy ending, but because it didn't seem to resolve in any way.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I still didn't get that all the way, but so she had a problem with it, but I tried to explain to her that was the point, and she understood that.
Yeah.
But she just doesn't like that.
She just doesn't want that. Yeah.
Which is completely viable.
But that's life, though.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you just die.
Right.
Which is really sad.
That is really
too sad, but like sometimes it ends and without like resolution.
Yeah, for sure.
But
I love that choice, though.
Yeah, it's like one of my favorite movies of all time.
Best picture.
I've had it on many lists in the show. So
for good reason, though.
Yeah. And my affinity for dark movies leads me into this last one. I was going to put a Kurosawa film on here because I love Kurosawa and I love Japanese film, but I decided to pick a film that was it caught me off guard, that I did not expect in film school. This is one that Dr. Yip showed me, and it's a film by Krzysztof Kieslowski, and it was made in 1988, and it's called a short film about killing. And I think we talked about this maybe a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think you brought it up.
But it's about a guy who basically is just a piece of crap. He's kind of a punk, doesn't really know how to get a job or do what he wants, but he knows how to. He tries to get a car. He steals a car from a guy, and it goes kind of wrong. He doesn't mean to kill this guy, but he just doesn't want to get in trouble. So he ends up killing this guy for a car. And it explains it a lot better. It makes it more sympathetic towards him, more than what I just explained. But he ends up killing him, and you know, it's just about his like trial, trying to get away, and then his trial and his being put to death. And it's one of the first films that I realized that like it talked about humans not being functional in society. Like maybe society isn't supposed to be isn't completely sympathetic to the humans living within it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Sure.
Yeah, like maybe society ignores a lot of human aspects to people, and
for like a larger maintaining of its progress.
Yeah. And so like because it just it's obvious it's an obvious commentary on the death penalty, and when he's finally put to death, it's just kind of like, wow, this is totally wrong. Like, yes, he did something wrong, but this is not the way that it should be. And it and it was that first time where I was like, wow, like maybe society is not. Man, I'm trying to put it into words. Hold on.
No, you're good. So it's a Kurosawa film?
No. It's
Kieslowski's film. Sorry, that threw me off.
Yeah, it's like humans don't belong in society, and society just functions despite ignoring the human condition. That's kind of what I put. But I don't know. I'm trying to explain it, but
Well, but I think that's one of the reasons, though. What's important about that being your choice is that you can't fully explain it.
yeah,
There's a reason that it's sticking with you because you're still learning things about it.
exactly. And I think it's like, obviously, like my taste will never like fully like be developed and stuff. But this is like the most recent development in my taste. You know, this is the most recent revelation that I've had, and it's the most sophisticated I've come to at this point. But yeah, it's making me question like the role of society and like how maybe I'm questioning like whether society, like humans, belong in an organized society, and maybe there are just too many humans to be able to organize them in the world.
Sure.
So that's what I'm trying to get at. So yeah, I don't mean to ramble too much.
No, you're great. No, I think that's, and again, yeah, I think it's great that you struggle to identify it in a way because, yeah, I feel like you're not supposed to, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's something that's with you right now and that'll stick with you. And that's kind of like with train spotting with me. It's like you find new things every time you think about it.
Yeah.
And that's what's so just important about film in general is that when done in a certain way, I won't even say done correctly, when done in a certain way, it can offer that, escape.
Yeah.
From your everyday life, and it can give you an idea that you would never think about of a guy facing the death penalty. Like, you would never think about this situation, but you're in it with this man for an hour and 30 minutes. You know?
And it just creates this like subjective perspective where it's like I see it through his eyes. I see the situation develop, relatively, instead of just like reading it on paper like, oh, this guy killed this guy, he's being put to death. I see the happenings, like the chain reaction of events is what creates this like human aspect that makes you question the like actions or the solution that society decided to take upon this guy. It's kind of like a 400 blows or like a Breathless type situation.
That's Truffaut and Godard, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I can remember if 400 blows is Truffaut.
Yeah.
Well, I think normally with this show, we do like a what can't we put down this week and kind of an outro, but I think I would rather almost leave it right here.
Yeah.
And let you guys, for those listening either live or to this recording, to you guys, obviously thank you so much for being with us, but we challenge you kind of in a way by exposing our personal picks to, even if you don't put it on our social media, for you guys to think about the movies that inspire your tastes to the movies that you love nowadays, whether that's, something like Sex and the City or, or Avengers. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what you like, but take a moment and actually think about why you like the movies that you like. Because there is a reason there, whether you think about it or not. And you don't have to do this deep character study, but at the same time, there are themes that are reoccurring that you can almost do some introspective with. Introspection. Yeah. So, but we would love it if you guys, for those listening, if you guys do want to share your top, 5 picks, search us out on our social media. We have Pop Culture Water Cooler Facebook and Twitter accounts at Pop Culture WC, or on our YouTube and SoundCloud to search Pop Culture Water Cooler. You guys can find us on there. And if you guys had any objections, or if you guys liked our choices, or if you guys just want to talk about your top 5 favorites, we'd love that interaction. But we want to thank you guys so much for being with us for these past, this semester and the semester before. We've had to make changes here and there, but we really appreciate you guys giving us your time of day. I know this is something that's very therapeutic for myself. Do you have anything that you want to add, Eric?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for letting me do this with you, man.
Oh,
it's been a great time.
You're completely welcome.
Yeah.
I really, I enjoy this so much that I really hope we can continue this.
Yeah. We will be back in some form or fashion.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much. We apologize for the strange schedule this semester, but as this being a school activity, school permitting, that we were here when we were able to. But that was our top 5 personal films. We hope you guys have an excellent summer. And again, search us out on our social media if you guys ever have any questions. We will be there for you guys.
All right. See you guys later.
Take care.